Welcome to another of AMS Weather Band's webinars in our series here. This one is When Looks Can Be Deceiving, Late Season Beach Safety with Bruckner Chase and our moderator, Doug Hildebrand. Before we begin, I would, of course, like to note that if anybody has any questions for our panelists and moderator, please let us know in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And then we will answer questions at the end of our presentation, or if the questions are appropriate to whatever is being discussed at the moment when it pops up, they might be addressed right then and there. So yes, we welcome any questions that you might have. But now I'd like to introduce today's presenter. So thank you again, Bruckner and Doug, for joining us this evening, taking the time out of your day to do this for us. Our moderator, Doug Hildebrand, with 20 years in the National Weather Service, currently serves as its external affairs lead for the Office of Water Prediction. Through various roles with the AMS, he's driven collaboration, drafted AMS statements, and worked to reduce lightning-related deaths. Bruckner Chase, a renowned ocean advocate and professional surf life-saving athlete, has had a diverse career from Division I swimming at Rice University to participating in challenging ocean events worldwide. His dedication to ocean conservation is showcased through the Ocean Positive Foundation. So, yes, the jersey which I'm wearing right now, which is awesome. Which strives to foster positive attitudes and actions towards oceans and communities. Bruckner is a recognized global expert in ocean and coastal safety, and he has collaborated with organizations such as NOAA, National Weather Service, Surf Lifesaving Australia, and the Weather Channel, among others. He also contributes locally as a professional ocean lifeguard, training and coaching fellow lifeguards on the Jersey Shore. So with that being said, Bruckner and Doug, I give you the floor.
Thanks, Gideon. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Gideon, thank you. And thanks to all of our participants here. Again, to reiterate, please don't be shy. Reach out with questions, comments. This topic of beach safety, rip currents, other hazards along the beachfront, it's a toughie. Many of us, what we're doing is we're searching out for these absolutely brutal stories of families, with loved ones lost, or a scenario where there's a swimmer in distress and a loved one races out without thinking to try to save them, and then they are the ones that end up as the victim. And so thank you, Bruckner. It's great to connect again. This is our third AMS Weather Band webinar, and I really think that points to one. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to talk about, but it's also pointing to this. I like to think of weather safety and water safety. It is a science, and we're constantly learning new things, new social science, new physical science about the beach dynamic. And just like any other science, what we message to the public is going to evolve, and it's going to change. And I think this moment in time, I'd be remiss if I don't mention, we're coming up later this month on the 5th year anniversary or, remembrance of Dr. Bill LaPenta, a dear colleague of mine and so many others across NOAA, the National Weather Service, and really across the weather, water, and climate community. We lost him he was on vacation with his wife and friends, and sort of in a blink of an eye, everything changed. And so we're all here together right now to talk about how we can save lives, keep those bad, heart-wrenching stories off of the off the media there. So Bruckner, with all that, give us the sort of the headline, and maybe we can explain the title here.
Well, I think it's really important that it is great that we've done this 3 times. And I think that, that doesn't count the live and in person that we did on the beach in Myrtle Beach as part of the AMS Broadcasters and Communicators Conference, where we actually had small craft advisory conditions and had a real live experience of sharing with people. This is what it looks like on a forecast, but what's really important is this is what it means to you as a beachgoer. whether you are down there doing a story or whether you are there just watching the waves break or whether you're there for a vacation to dive into the water with your family and kids and stuff. And I think one of the things that you said really is something that I think we're talking about more, but really kind of needs to come to the forefront. I was recently reviewing a presentation from the World Conference on Drowning Prevention where they looked at dangers and hazards on a beach in France. And they were trying to find out, how can we predict the risk? And they said, well, we need to study, we need to look at, AI possibly to look at, video content from there. And then we need to better understand the behavior of this near shore swash zone environment. But what they didn't recognize, and what I think is really critical, is we need to study the social science side of this and the human behavior side of this. We often talk about many of the people that are drowning in these incidences are male and they're younger, so there is some risk-taking behavior in this, but also just how we communicate what these dangers are to what someone's understanding is when they come to the beach for the first time or they come once a year. So, it doesn't, we can tell them that the winds are this, the sun is this, the storms are this, the waves are this, but if it doesn't have a context that they can really identify with, they're not going to understand. And I've seen a lot of well-intentioned broadcasts over the last several months of summer where I'm on the South Jersey shore. I work as an EMT and ocean lifeguard on the shore here. So, we started sending lifeguards home, or sorry, we didn't start sending them home. Lifeguards started leaving for college and other commitments 2 or 3 weeks ago. So even though Labor Day is a traditional end of summer, we were scaling back staffing and guarded beaches as early as the second, third week of August. So there are fewer lifeguards on the beach. So the messaging of swim in front of a lifeguard when there are fewer and fewer lifeguards around, isn't going to resonate. And I think what we really need to focus on is the people that are, coming from out of town or coming from non-shore areas to these beaches where it looks beautiful, and they don't have an understanding of what do I really need to look for. And like I started to say, I've seen a lot of broadcasters and communicators saying, well, hey, these are flags that you need to look for. And while there are areas like Australia where the flag system is uniform across every beach, across 325 surf lifesaving clubs, anywhere you go in the country, that's not the case here in the US. Flags may not have the same meaning in different places. And Ocean City, New Jersey, which serves well over 1 million visitors a year, doesn't even use a flag system. So if you're looking for flags when you're visiting Ocean City, you're not going to see them. There's lifeguards there that are going to tell you about conditions, and there are other ways that they'll communicate that, but you're not going to see flags. So I think that we really need to try to find a way to make the conditions that we're forecasting or the conditions we're telling people about, make it really mean something for them, and mean something for them as a parent if they're looking after kids, or a friend if they're looking after others.
So here we are. We're, in the middle of September. We've got a, hurricane making landfall in Louisiana. I was just scrolling social media, and the Mobile Weather Forecast Office, National Weather Service, posted a message that, people are still getting in the water, even when there are, red flags out and dangerous conditions are out there in the water. But the reality is, September weather is often the best weather of the year. The water's warm and it's not too hot, and I'm looking forward to, I'll be on Long Island this weekend,
Okay.
80, low 80s, sunshine, gorgeous. But as you're mentioning, there will likely not be certainly as many lifeguards as in, the peak summer weeks. But, just what else can we do? Like, what can I do? I'm a decent swimmer. I'm now past 50, so maybe I'm not as strong a swimmer as I used to be. But my mind is like thinking about what I was, I guess my strategy is, don't go as far out in the water, maintain situational awareness. Certainly, if there are options to swim near a lifeguard, do it, but really scale back. If you're going out with, some buddies of mine, my brother, scale back, don't go as far. But then it's that situational awareness. And I want you to talk about, whether it's rip currents, longshore currents, maintaining situational awareness when you're in the ocean is absolutely critical.
Well, and I think a couple of things you mentioned there, you're talking about situational awareness, which is the conditions that you're seeing in front of you, and they're going to change. And from someone who will sit the beach all day long, we can have glassy and calm, please come and enjoy the beach. The water is going to be as calm as it's going to be at 10 o'clock when we're setting up. At 12:30, when that wind switches, when the weather changes, all of a sudden now we're flying a red flag, because now the wind conditions, the tide conditions, the water conditions have changed. And that's the situational awareness, that it can change that quickly. I was out training on the water the other day, and while I was out there, the wind switched roughly 180 degrees. It was coming from the northwest. It was blowing offshore. By the time I turned around and I paddled a few miles down the beach, the wind was out of the southeast, coming straight onto the ocean. It had gone from 5 miles an hour to 15. So now it's white capping and really challenging just to navigate through that. So that's the situational awareness, knowing that you could literally go out on a float, or you could rent a kayak and go out, and conditions could change. And what you need to know from a situational awareness standpoint, and since we're all, kind of in this weather sphere right now, is knowing the forecast for the beach that you're visiting. Too often here, if I am on the Weather Channel and I'm setting my location for, where I am right now, it'll pull a weather report from several miles inland, probably at a weather station at the airport. What I really need is a weather forecast for the beach environment, as close to where I'm going as I can possibly get. Because it's not just that it's a little bit cooler at the shore sometimes. The winds may be different. The behavior of storms may be completely different. And it's really important that you are as informed as possible about what's going on right there. And that also means looking at not just the weather forecast, and we've talked to some of the meteorologists and communicators about this. It's also looking at the coastal advisory forecast that NOAA will put out. Is there a small craft advisory? It might be sunny and lovely, but there's a small craft advisory, which means that near shore environment is going to be very, very hazardous and really high risk, depending upon the level of ability and competency of the person going out there. The direction of the wind, if it's a small child on a float or a raft, can really be impacted by the angle that the beach is facing and the angle that wind is blowing from and how strong it is. So some of that may change during the day, but also knowing that, okay, well, I was told the wind does this, but we're going to a slightly different beach and it's pointed a little bit differently, or it's in a little bit different area. So how is that weather going to impact right here? And that situational awareness also needs to be partnered up with self-awareness. And what you just talked about, I'm a little bit older now. Maybe I'm not swimming quite as strong as I used to be. I don't know if I necessarily could pass a requal right now as a lifeguard, or I am things change, and our ability to be comfortable in situations change. Let's say you flew for a day and you're exhausted and you wake up and you just want to go hit the ocean because it's been a year since you were here, and you grab a boogie board and you go out, but you're exhausted. You were up late last night. You didn't eat something that agreed with you, so you're a little bit sick and a little bit weak. Those conditions internally can really affect negatively your ability to navigate stuff that might be something you're not used to all of a sudden. And that's where people get into trouble. So it's a matter of that situational awareness of specifically for where you're going, and then the self-awareness. And there's something called the GAR model, the Coast Guard looks at, which is a readiness model. And it doesn't just look at conditions, but also in some cases the equipment. And then how are you as an individual right now? Are you rested? Are you feeling strong? Are you uninjured? Are you alert and aware? Are you ready to address whatever might come into that? So I think that, again, we're talking about situational awareness of physical components of the beach environment, but then social awareness of what does this mean to me and what am I ready for? And I think one of the things we've talked a lot about this year at the conference, and then a lot on the Weather Channel and through some other broadcasters, is raising everyone's blue IQ. And what we really talk about is bridging the gap between your perception of your swimming ability or your competency in the water and what the ocean conditions might demand. If those two aren't synced up, something's going to go wrong. It might mean that you just get a little bit of a scare and you still get back in, or it might mean something much more tragic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know we've been making some headway in expanding the messaging, the safety messaging, raising the blue IQ well away from the coastline. And, you've had some sort of interior state TV meteorologists participate. I mean, that's where it starts. That's where it should, whether it starts there or not, it should start everywhere. But you got to, you can't necessarily reach the family from Kansas as they're stepping onto the beach, and maybe the lifeguard stand has the rip current sign of what to do. But if that's the first time they're even thinking about beach hazards, it's almost like you're catching them way too late.
Yeah, and my experience, and I live at the shore. I'm here year round. I do interact with people as a lifeguard, and I think that by the time that they are loading up the trailers to bring the kids to the beach and all the toys and all the accoutrements and the cooler and packing everything, they're kind of on overload. So that's not really kind of the best time to go, hey, this is what you ought to know. This is what you ought to bring with you. And I think that we've done a lot through the NOAA Ocean Today Wave Safe series of, kind of this is how you prepare for it. This is what situational awareness means. These are kind of the hazards you should be aware of in the beaches where you may be visiting. We shot that series everywhere from American Samoa to Hawaii, the Pacific Northwest, the East Coast, to give kind of people an idea of these are the kind of things that are going to look a little bit different if you're visiting this beach. Maybe it's a beach you've visited many times before, or maybe it's your first trip to this part of the country. And I think being aware of how different beaches are very different from each other, and then, that weather forecast, but starting before you've got the kids yelling, hey, let's go, let's go, let's go, or you're distracted by other stuff, so that you arrive prepared for whatever you might face. And, as lifeguards, we're very focused on being preventative. I mean, ideally, we want the lifeguards to stay dry. So you will see a lot in news reports and with the USLA, the number of preventative actions that they take over the course of the year. And those are all designed to make it so that we don't have to assist someone back to shore, that we can stay dry, that everyone else stays safe. And those preventative actions are something that lifeguards take. But I would challenge everyone to go, what preventative actions can you take before you go down to the beach? And I think a real important role that even inland meteorologists or inland communicators or inland WFOs can do, and we did this with some of the inland ones. I grew up in Tennessee, worked with the WFO in Memphis, going, hey, here's some messaging you can put out in social media so that all of those people in your community that go to the Florida Panhandle for their, annual beach vacation kind of got indoctrinated into how do I prepare to keep this safe before I go down there.
Yeah, I mean, it's that double-edged sword. Everyone wants people to go enjoy themselves, get to the beach, experience the thrill of that surf environment, enjoy it. But I always like to compare what we're seeing with beach fatalities to like going to an amusement park with the family. I think the latest statistics are about 35, probably a little bit more than that at least 35 have been reported by the National Weather Service on the surf fatalities around the country. But if we had, and it's probably more, but 35 reported, but if we had 35 deaths in our country's amusement parks, it would be headline news. There would be like, what's going on? And that's kind of unrealistic in the sense that amusement parks with safety features and regulations, they're taking that preparedness and that protective action away from the participant, the rider, right? But you can't do that. You can't do that at the beach. And so, I guess, I don't know if this is a question, comment, or whatever, but there just seems to be a mismatch of people's awareness, their blue IQ, and the risk that they're literally walking into when they do enter that swash area.
Yeah, and I think that what you talked about, equating to, and I will tell you that the number of fatalities is actually much higher than that. I think that I know of a few that are not on that list. I think that at the end of the year, the USLA will get reports from all of their member agencies, and that usually trends somewhere a little over 100 each year. But keep in mind, too, that's only from reporting agencies. That's only from member agencies that report. So that, too, might miss something. I think what's also important is we talk about surf zone fatalities, and people go, well, yes, 35 is too many, or even if it's 100, that's still across the entire country and the, millions and millions of beachgoers, it's relatively low if you're just looking at the statistical numbers. But you also want to look at, from a study in Canada, for every single fatality, a drowning fatality or a near shore or beach fatality, there is a 3 to 5x number of injuries that required hospitalization. Remember, drownings don't have to be fatal. You can have a non-fatal drowning, you can have a spinal cord injury, you can have, a traumatic injury to a shoulder or a joint or something else from that surf environment. So now let's say there are 100 fatalities. Well, there's probably 500 or 400 that ended up in the hospital. Then if you just look at the number of rescues that are involved, that can be tens of thousands. And I will tell you, as someone who has rescued people, that can be an extremely traumatic experience, and not one that I would wish on anyone, because what our foundation wants to do is, we love the ocean. I want you to be able to get into that water, to be prepared for whatever you might find, and have an incredible experience in the water. And what we do is, we know that there are certain dangers in the water, but the level of risk that danger presents to the individual depends upon their preparedness for that. So as a former college swimmer and a professional ocean lifeguard and professional ocean athlete, a danger that would be a high risk for someone who's never been to the beach before is a good training day for me. So recognizing where you are, that self-awareness with the situation awareness of what's going on out there, to bring the risk down. And then also recognizing it doesn't have to be a fatality. There are several instances of spinal cord injuries that will dramatically change not just the life of the person injured, but everyone that becomes their caregiver or family member. So I know a lot of people go, well, there aren't that many. Yes, but the number of traumatic experiences, the number of non-fatal incidences, we're not saying don't go to the beach. It's an amazing place to be. I want you to come here. I want to share this with other people. It's changed my life. It's an amazing place to be. What we want to do is help you better understand, where am I, so that those dangers do not become a risk for me, my kids, my family, or my friends.
Yes. No, very good.
Yeah.
So we're coming down to the bottom of the hour. So I'm gonna pause a little bit. If any of our viewers are pondering a question, please reach out. This is a great time for questions. And, it's interesting as we progress on the Blue IQ, and we've been really pushing this the secondary drownings, where people will immediately go out. They're not taking 10. I'd like you to jump in on take 10. And I gotta say, take 10, I'm a full believer in it, but boy, is that tough.
Yeah.
If it's my daughter out there screaming for help. But talk to us about that, and then if there are any questions, let's do it.
Yeah, and I think that's really good. And I think that I think it's important, since we're talking to forecasters and communicators and stuff. You said secondary, and what it is it's second victim drownings, where it's the well-intentioned, the good Samaritan, the person or the parent or friend that goes out, that they often will end up in trouble as well, or they actually become the one that drowns. There were a family in Hilton Head earlier this year where someone went out to save the kids. The kids ended up okay, and I think it was actually both parents ended up becoming victims in that drowning, fatal drowning. So that second victim drowning, and what we talk about is we know if someone you love is in trouble, you're going to go out and you want to help them. We did a lot of work in American Samoa where there are no lifeguard agencies, and there is a marine rescue department, but they're a long way away from the more remote villages. And so we know that if someone sees someone in trouble, they're going to go in. So how do we set them up to succeed? And we say, protect yourself first to save others. And actually this is part of a series with NOAA, the Wave Safe Take 10, protect yourself to save others. It's been rolled back to the Rip Current Survival Guide. And it's exactly the same thing that a lifeguard would do before they charge in. And what we're saying in this Take 10 is it's an emotional pause to make the next right decision. You pause, you stop, you alert a lifeguard or call for help or have someone call 911 and activate whatever that EMS system is for that location. Then what you want to do is look around for something that floats or something that will allow you to assist the person, maybe a rope to throw to them or float to throw to them, or a float you can take out with you so that you can stay safe as well. Because what you're trying to do is buy time for professional rescuers to get their help out. And then the other thing too is we want to, stay calm, so if you can, the last choice is to go charging into the water. That's the last thing you want to do. Is there another way that you can help them, help yourself, and assist them by getting professional help before you go in? Because as soon as people start to get wet, that's when things can go wrong. We actually have, rather than sharing a screen, I can share a poster, which is images from the Take 10 cartoon. These actually are going up in several communities around the country, made from recycled ocean-bound plastics so that we can protect the oceans and protect our communities at the same time. But it is a tragic incident that it is second victim drownings that cause that are the cause of a large percentage of the fatal drownings out there. And as a lifeguard, I will not go charging into the water. Lifeguards, rookies are told they never walk between stands without carrying a rescue can. At least in the Jersey Shore, we always have whistles around our neck so we can blow shorts and alert others that something's going on right here. So we have a multi-layered system to protect us. So we have the equipment to help someone so we can get to them quickly, but we have other lifeguards that come to respond. So if something becomes more than just one person in the water, we're ready for it. And that 5 to 10 seconds that you take to go out prepared will not significantly impact their chance of survival, because now you both may be able to make it back to shore. And it's, that urgency is always there, but we're watching also, trying to be preventative and trying to get there before it becomes much more dire.
So, we've gotten a couple of comments sort of emphasizing all of this. And, there's again, you see these stories, someone goes overboard, even on a boat, and it's the first person in who may not have take 10. And so I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
How realistic, average swimmer goes in, see whether it's a loved one, see someone in distress, in deeper water, so you're not just able to run out there, and you're not taking any kind of flotation device, and this person is in full survival mode. How realistic is it for that person, that rescuer, to be able to swim out there, grab a hold of this person, staying afloat, and bringing them to safety without assistance and without a flotation device?
I will tell you that, and I'm going to be just really succinct on this and not try to be tactful. You won't be able to do it. You absolutely will not be able to do it. I have had the benefit of being able to train with Coast Guard rescue swimmers and practice dragging someone out in the open ocean for 50 meters at a time, and that's wearing fins and cross chest carrying them. It is absolutely not realistic that you could control someone in panic mode and swim them back to shore and navigate back in. I know that, I've been out and just reading the waves and reading the currents is just tremendously challenging. And I see often people go, oh, the waves were 3 to 4 feet. And then I go and pull up a Surfline report, and the waves were actually 1 foot or maybe 2. That once we're out there, everything looks much bigger and much harder. And I will tell you, it is a lot scarier and a lot different when you're standing up on the beach and looking down at it, as opposed to being on the other side of those waves at eye level to the water level. And I think that it is, if you look at some studies that the American Red Cross did, they found in a survey that more than 50% of Americans admitted that they could not pass the basic Red Cross swimming test. Now, the swimming test included jumping into deep water, coming back to the surface and turning around and climbing back out on a ladder. It included staying afloat for a minute. It included swimming 25 yards. So more than 50% of Americans said they could not do it. And that is in a pool environment. That's 25 yards. If you're talking about getting out beyond the surf, even the instructions that if you're carried out by a pulsing strong rip current, and now you need to swim perpendicular to that current and maybe swim 50 to 100 meters to get out of it and navigate back into the surf, according to the American Red Cross, more than 50% of Americans admit that they could not even come close to doing that. So now to think about trying to control someone else who's panicking and swim you both in, it's, as someone who has swum people back in when I had a rescue can and fins on, it takes a lot to stay calm and to keep them calm and keep them under control. And the worst place to navigate is the final 25 yards. When the surf is breaking and the waves are crashing down, I'm exhausted. I'm trying to keep the swimmer's face above the water so they can breathe. The part of the water that I am respectful of the most is that swash zone, the place where the waves are breaking. It's whitewash. We talk about so casually that, rip currents just, swim out of it and then navigate back in through the surf, as though that's an easy thing to do. And I will tell you, that area that you're now telling people to just swim back through is some of the most challenging water in the ocean, or can be.
Yeah, I wish everybody here could hear what you were just saying. And that, again, I just don't think people are looking at it in that way. Certainly when they're racing to save somebody, we're basically telling them, unless you're Hercules, you're not going to be able to, without any kind of assistance, flotation device, something, a rope, you're not going to be able to make this a successful rescue. And then Leonard here, makes a comment about, hard to find information about all the things that you do need to think about. And it goes to all the things that we're doing, Bruckner.
Mm-hmm.
As we sort of wrap up here, tell us about the future. Where are we headed? What collaborations are going on? And
I think that's great.
You had
I
this
think
great moment in Myrtle Beach at AMS.
Mm-hmm.
You opened some eyes from a TV, the TV Mets on not just reading about it, but living it, experiencing what it's like. And it's great that you had that dynamic of a small craft advisory, and it was sort of a real moment, not the glassy water. Where are we going? What can we do?
Yeah. And I think it's just to kind of point out that there was, one of the conference organizers at AMS texted me the morning that we were taking everyone out, and they go, "Hey, there's a small craft warning advisory that the WFO just put out. Are we canceling the session?" And I had this look of glee on my face going, no, this is what we actually wanted, because we had set this up with me as a lifeguard. The other person helping us in that group was a retired Coast Guard rescue swimmer, and my wife. So it's like, no, we're seeing these dangers from this forecast from the WFO, but we have taken the risk to zero because we're prepared for it and prepared to show you what this is going to be like. And I think that 45 minutes is barely enough time to kind of scratch the surface of, what you need to know and how to know it. I think that, over the next year or so of working with you and AMS, we're going to keep building this library, keep raising everyone's blue IQ and understanding of what else can I look for to know when the wind's too strong, or the direction it's blowing, or the size of the waves, and how to navigate through that. A couple of things that we're working on right now, and I'd love for someone to reach out. We took a new partner that works in the financial services market, and we took the information from the WaveSafe series and created these beach bag tags that are made from recycled ocean-bound plastics with QR codes on the front and back. You'll recognize this as the Take 10 call out in both English and Spanish. This QR code takes someone directly to the NOAA video on protecting yourself to save others. So it's a reminder on your bag, and then something you can share with others. And on the other side, this QR code takes people to a wealth of information on a website that has all the WaveSafe series for different beaches, as well as links to get tides and currents and surf forecast and the like, so that you are connected with information that might be very much more specific to the beach that you're actually visiting. The other thing that I'm excited that we're getting ready to do is we created the WaveSafe series with NOAA Ocean Today. We filmed all over the country, even all the way down to American Samoa and the villages of Aunuu and Leone. And we are about to start a new film series that we're going to start to write now. We're going to film it over the winter, so it's ready for Memorial Day, which is going to be WaveSafe Blue IQ. And what we're going to look at is, how do we bridge that gap between people's perception of what they can do in the water and their swimming ability, and what that ocean or that water condition may demand. And we're looking at some creative ways to do that, possibly even bringing in some football player friends of mine that, are the epitome of, people see football players, they're fit, they're strong, we know what they do on the gridiron on Saturdays or on Sundays or on Mondays, but then translate their strength and their ability to what that means in the ocean, because the ocean doesn't necessarily care what you can do on land. It's a different environment to navigate through. But we're going to focus on bridging that social gap of understanding. So I'm really excited with what we're putting together with that. And the plan right now is to film that on the Gulf. So it'll look like another beach that is also very specific to a lot of people in the Southeast region that go down there and vacation on Florida, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi. But, we're in a pilot phase with these tags. We're eager to get out. We've got about another 1,000. We want to get out to communities and just kind of let them use them, let them see what they're like, and then activate around that in a larger degree. But really pointing people to the NOAA Ocean Today resources that are there right now, both the rip currents and the wave safety, because there are different beach hazards that present different types of risks that you need to be prepared for. And then again, like to come full circle back to that, preventing the second victim drownings and knowing that protecting someone else is an emotional response. Even as a lifeguard, someone I don't know, I cannot go to the beach and not be watching the water, because I know that at any given time there might be someone that I need to help. And I've had a lot of after hours rescues where there were no lifeguards on the beach other than me, and someone's in trouble and I needed to take action for that. And I think that I know how scary that can be when you're used to having a whole crew behind you, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So if we can be preventative and focus not on how to survive a rip current once you're out in the water, or how to survive an ocean condition once you're out there, but how to make better decisions so you don't end up there in the first place.
Great messages. And beyond your physical rescues, you have saved lives, educating so many others. So Bruckner, thank you. And it's also an opportunity for all the viewers, all the participants on this webinar, that you can be a hero. You can, reach out to friends, family, colleagues. If you're on air, certainly, be the echo chamber on all of this. But everyone has a role in this. We have a comment here from Darlene. Definitely need more education for public. Great that you lived in Florida, and we do. I think some people put their guard down along the Gulf coast. I know Darlene here is mentioning Cocoa Beach on the East Coast, but people think, well, the Gulf, the waves are smaller, the slope, the depth of the water isn't as great, and so they think, okay, it's a modified pool, but it's not.
Yeah, and reading Darlene, I could not agree with you more that too often everything gets attributed to a rip current as a default. I think we've messaged so much about rip currents, and Weather Service has, that often that kind of becomes the default. But what you experience, like shore break and large breaking waves, often people can get into trouble long before they may end up in a rip current. And there's all those and shore break actually is also one of the videos in Wave Safe. There's surviving shore break. And just to address that one question, one of the things we start with is telling people, before you walk down and get in the water, don't watch the water for a minute or two. Watch it for 10 or 15 minutes. Watch for the pattern of the swells and the changing sets of waves that are coming through. I'm very familiar with the beach where I train, but I won't go in the water until I've watched that and scanned everything for 5 or 10 minutes. I want to see everything that's going on before I go in there. And especially in the Pacific, where I used to live, sets would come through and there might be several minutes between larger waves. And if you headed out at the wrong time, you could get crunched. And what Darlene talks about with the impact of those waves, we need to talk about all of those beach hazards. And when an incident, an accident, or a fatality happens, finding out what really happened, looking at eyewitness reports, looking at the forecasting, looking at the surf reports, and then messaging so that we prevent that situation from happening again, because it's not always a rip current. And we had an instance last year where someone got swept out and they were way offshore, and it was reported as a rip current, but what it actually was an outgoing current at an inlet between two islands. And that is a tidal current that will not dissipate like a rip, that will take you half a mile offshore. And it's a different hazard, and it's a different blue IQ that you need to know if you're going somewhere at an inlet at the end of an island where there's a large tidal flow.
Bruckner, thank you. And
always great to be with you.
For our viewers, whether it's live here or even recorded, if you're watching the recording, if you have questions, if you have an interest in the Take 10 posters or the beach tags, reach out to AMS. We will connect you to Bruckner here, and we will keep fighting the good fight on beach safety and saving lives. So with that, again, Bruckner, thank you for taking the time. Gideon, back to you.